How many books have you read so far this year? When we talk about reading, we tend to emphasize finishing a novel, flipping the final page. Once we finish a book, that is when we talk about it, right? But what about all those beautiful stories that we sink our teeth into and never really let go of? The book on your nightstand that you read a chapter of every so often. That book which graphic design you like to admire over and over again. That one book that you reread at different stages of your life and find new meaning every single time. In this video today, I want to pay homage to the books that we keep returning to, the ones we savor slowly. So basically, I'm going to be talking about books that I really love, but I never really talk about them on my channel because I technically haven't finished them, or because I reread parts very often, but you know, I've only reviewed them once. If you're looking for your next good book to savor, first, a word from today's sponsor, which is Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a bookish subscription service, and in my opinion, the best way to discover new books every single month. Because every single month, their team creates the best curated list of all the up and coming authors of the next month, like new books that you really need to look forward to, and you can choose one that will be delivered to your doorstep. That way you always have the best new thing to read. For this month, I chose the new book by Olivia Blake, which is Gifted and Talented. This book sounds like what happens when you mix Succession with a little bit of fantasy. And I also chose an extra book, The Passion Project, because in spring I always really get in the mood for a little romance. I'm always really looking forward to see which books are going to end up on their monthly list. You can also get your first hardcover book of the month for only $5 if you use the code DIAMOND. And this month you can also get a free hat. That is really funny. So click that link in the description to claim your beautiful book and a very funny hat. Okay, let's hop into the video. I do want to say this concept of this video has been inspired by a TikTok I saw by Quirine Brouwer, who you should all follow, by the way, where she called these kinds of books like her Bibles, aka books she just like rereads religiously. I really liked the concept of this video because it made me think of like, oh, what are those books that we just keep returning to, either because we keep rereading them maybe, or personally I have a lot of books that, you know, like I technically haven't finished, like I technically haven't read the entire thing because, for example, they are essay collections or short story collections or more like graphical artsy books, but that I do like to read very often and like to return to. And it's kind of a shame that you never really get to talk about them online on this channel because, you know, I only talk about books technically when I fully finish them. So that is why I've made this video. If you're still confused about what I mean, just watch the video. It'll make sense. The first book that I want to talk about, I think anyone who has been watching my channel for a while has heard me talk about this like ad nauseum, and I'm gonna talk about it again because this is my channel, I can do what I want. I'm talking about the Tao of Pooh. This is like the perfect example of what kind of books I mean with this video. So the Tao of Pooh is this really short non-fiction slash fiction novel about the author Benjamin Hoff having conversations with Winnie the Pooh. I know that's super cute. If I could have conversations with Winnie the Pooh, I definitely would. I would like to talk to Piglet and tell him that everything is gonna be okay. I think I could also use some wisdom from this cute little bear, because what Benjamin Hoff argues is that Pooh apparently is like a perfect example of Taoism, because Winnie the Pooh has this way of just kind of going with the flow and accepting himself for who he is, not trying to force or change anything. All those ideas really fit with the idea of Taoism. And what I like about this book is that my friend gave this to me for my birthday, and she told me that she tends to reread it and see new things in it every time she reads it. And now I've read it, and I think I have reread this maybe three times, like fully reread this, but more times that I like started rereading it but never like fully finished it, all at different stages of my life. And just like that friend who gifted this book to me, every single time I see something new and I have new opinions on it. And that actually in itself already shows you how like one singular review of a book doesn't really tell you everything, because my opinion on this book and its ideas changes every single time that I read it. I remember the first time that I read this, just the general ideas of Taoism really spoke to me, and this idea of like being like water and going with the flow. But I remember the last time that I started rereading this, the part that really spoke to me and that I started highlighting and writing things down about was the idea of like accepting yourself for what you are, like the idea of not trying to put a square peg into a round hole and just trying to force that in there. You just have to accept things for what they are and what they are at their essence, because I was going through, you know, a little moment of insecurity, I guess, and that really spoke to me at that moment, this idea of like you have to accept who you are and not trying to force yourself into something that you can't be, which I know is like a really basic concept, but the way that it is explained in this book using Winnie the Pooh stories, it just hits different. It makes you look at it in a different way. There's a lot in this book about how science and like analytical people tend to overanalyze everything and over complexify everything. That's not even a word. See, I'm just complexifying things. And while I was studying, that really spoke to me, because I was like, so true. I am so done with making everything so overly complex and all this jargon, and like, that really spoke to me. But then I reread it again and I was like, actually in a different light, this is starting to sound a little bit like anti-intellectualism if you interpret it a little bit differently, and that I don't agree with. So there's just many ways in which my viewpoint of the ideas in this book change throughout the years. A review is just a snapshot. It's just 1 second of your ideas of a book. But if you revisit certain stories and certain ideas, you as a person change, and your opinions on that story or that book are also gonna change. And that is part of the reading experience. That is part of what makes books so beautiful, is how they can impact us and how we are always a little bit different from the moment that we started reading the book compared to when we finished reading that book. For me personally, this book is like the perfect example of that, but I have more books that are kind of like that as well. Okay, the next book kind of has to do with the Tao of Pooh, and that is, if I can find it, it's a very tiny little book. Teeny tiny. Here it is. It is the Dao De Jing. If you don't know, this is like the original text, the spiritual text for Taoism. I guess you could say like what the Bible is to Christianity is the Tao De Jing to Taoism. If I'm saying that correctly, I'm not an expert on like Eastern philosophies and religion. This is originally Chinese, and a long time ago I read the Dutch translation, and I remember gifting it to the friend who gave this book to me, because I was like, hey, you want to also read the original version? And she was like, yeah. And then we kind of forgot about the fact that I lent her that book for like 5 years. I think she still has it. Give it back. No, it's fine. And then recently we started talking about this book again, and we were like, shall we buddy read like the original Dao De Jing? So we both bought like the English copy because the translation is a little bit better, and we've decided to like read a little bit of it and then discuss it together, and then read a little bit of it and then discuss it together. So this is another example of a book that technically I read the Dutch translation like 5 years ago. Do I remember anything? Not really. So now I've been very slowly going through the English one. Wow, I have super in-depth notes like LOL. Why did I find this funny? Oh, it says better to hold fast to the void. Apparently I found that funny. Yeah, I have no intention of like flying through this book. I mean, it's super short. It's like 80 pages. I could be like, woohoo, reading goal. Let me sit down and just read this entire thing in one afternoon just so I can tick off another book. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm probably gonna sit with this for like a year or something and just very slowly read one little bit of wisdom at the time and savor it, you know? What have I learned from this so far? The idea of not taking action, like not trying to force anything, but allowing things to intuitively happen, which is good advice for someone who tends to be a little bit of a control freak like me. Okay, let's talk about some fiction. Yes, I have here The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This is a collection of short stories by Angela Carter. The most well-known one is The Bloody Chamber, which I have already read. But the thing about Angela Carter, oh, I love the way she writes. She has this like haunting, dark writing style. I tend to not even notice that. Oh, I just realized that like my neighbors have been hammering something for the past 20 minutes. I hope that didn't pick up on the microphone. Anyway, extra vibes. Neighbor ambience to study and read to. I always kind of forget that Angela Carter is considered like dark, because I'm like, wow, she just writes so beautifully, and then I read it to someone else like, wow, look at how beautiful, and they're like, that's really dark, and I'm like, oh, I just thought it was beautiful. Anyway, one of her best quotes: his wedding gift clasped around my throat, a choker of rubies 2 inches wide, like an extraordinarily precious slit throat. Oh, that's just beautiful. So basically what I'm trying to say is I loved The Bloody Chamber, and the rest of the stories in this collection are all reimaginings of fairy tales, which is one of my favorite types of genres. And I don't want to go through this like super quickly and, you know, treat it as a 250-page book and just finish it. I just sometimes want to read one short story and then sit with it, because these are the kind of stories you really want to sit with. I read The Bloody Chamber, which is like a gothic retelling of Bluebeard. It's very much about like toxic relationships and control in relationships. And I've also read The Errol King, which is also actually about she writes a lot about toxic relationships, I just realized. But the image of the Errol King, this like forest creature, fae being that our main character meets and kind of gets ensnared by in some kind of relationship, is so vivid in my mind. I feel like it's coming from both neighbors right now. It's so vivid in my mind, and I think the only way that can happen is because I like sit with every story instead of just going through this. I also get a lot of writing inspiration from Angela Carter, so sometimes I just like to reread parts. Also there's an introduction where they talk about Angela Carter's writing style and what she is known for, and that also always kind of makes me feel better, because I'm really bad at writing dialogue, and apparently Angela Carter's kind of known for just not writing much dialogue and just focusing on the things that she's good at, which is writing descriptions and like vibes and characters. And you know, if Angela Carter can do it, I can do it too. Okay, another one of those books that I never really like technically finish is The Wheel of the Year. This is, I thought it was like a coffee table book. Apparently it's a children's book. I don't care. What matters is that it's beautifully illustrated by Jessica Rue. I love Jessica Rue's illustrations, and it is basically about all the yearly celebrations. So like midsummer, midwinter, spring equinox, autumn equinox, those kinds of things, and about like the changing of the seasons, what kind of religions celebrate what celebration during spring, summer, winter, autumn. And where they come from, the changes in nature every season, things that you can kind of focus your attention on every season, like when spring is coming around, focusing on, you know, the flowers that are blooming. But when it's like the middle of winter, it'll say things like, oh, you can already notice that there are like really little knobs appearing on the trees already, getting ready for spring. Basically what I love about this book is that 8 times a year I can look at this book, take a moment to, I guess, appreciate whatever is happening in nature around this time of year and what kind of things humans tend to celebrate around this time of year. For example, a few weeks ago it was the spring equinox, so I read the part about the spring equinox. Am I ever going to read like everything that is in this book? Probably not. I don't think so. Just the parts that I find interesting. And that's okay, because this is clearly not one of those books that is made for you to like finish particularly. That's not the point of this book. The point of this book is literally to like return to it at multiple moments during the year. And I think that's beautiful. Another type of book that I tend to like come back to very often, but takes a while for me to finish, are essay collections, like slightly more academic essay collections. One that I have here is Susan Sontag's Against Interpretation and Other Essays. I bought this because I was very interested in her Against Interpretation essay. If you don't know, by the way, Susan Sontag is a writer, philosopher, essayist, does a lot of cultural criticism, especially in like the 60s and 70s and 80s. An icon, so to say. Her most well-known work is Against Interpretation, where she basically argues against, well, guess what? Interpretation. I know you never could have guessed it. She argues against over analyzing art and what she calls like digging for a meaning and excavating a piece of art by trying to see like a meaning in it, and that instead we should focus more also on just the aesthetic experience of a piece of art. Like, what does it look like? What do the brush strokes look like? What do the colors do with us as an observer? I'm definitely simplifying it as I'm talking about it right now. I find her a little bit tough to read as someone who does not have a background in like film or like art criticism, because that's most of what she writes about. It's like film and art criticism, and there's clearly a type of language to it that I'm not privy to yet. So that's why I just sometimes like to read one of her essays. And then again, just let that sit for a while, and then read another one of her essays, and then let that sit for a while. Maybe in a few years I can give you a review of the entire thing, but again, that's just not really the point of this book for me. Another example, and one that I do actually really want to finish sooner, is Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde, another brilliant essayist, feminist writer. As it says on the book, she gave voice to those outside the circle of this society's definition of an acceptable woman, because she is black, she is lesbian. You may know her from her piece, The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House, which is also in this essay collection, and basically the same story. I just want to read one essay at a time in this. I read her piece on eroticism, which is really good, especially if you're someone who has opinions about smutty books. You should read her essay on eroticism. It's really good, and like the importance of it and how it is like a form of power that we can enhance, and how it is, especially in women, it is kind of, people try to take it away because it is a kind of power. She says like eroticism is a feeling of knowing what you want, searching for pleasure, and like taking that for yourself, and knowing what you like and what you don't like. So it is, according to her, no wonder that people try to take that away from women. Story for another time. Bottom line, 2 essay collections by 2 amazing women that I'm just kind of like slowly making my way through. Okay, a book that I haven't been able to shut up about for like the past year, apparently. I am gonna be talking about this again. Oh, the book kind of, it's bad. Something bad happened to this book. It's Song for the Wild Build, which you know I love, but it's basically I put a plant next to it on my bookshelf, and for some reason like the water has been like seeping through the pot of the plant. I don't know, I think it's just humidity of it, and now it's gone super like crooked and stuff. And you know what? Let's say 5-6 years ago I would have hated this, I would have been so sad about the physical copy of a book not being pristine perfect anymore. I don't really care anymore. I'm like, whatever, it's read. I read the book, so it's lived in character growth, I guess. I don't think I need to repeat for the 20,000th time that I just really love this book and that it's a beautiful piece, sci-fi piece on what humanity needs and our need for community and our need to be like nicer to ourselves. It's kind of a utopian society where people live with nature a little bit more, and also robots live in nature, and also some people's job is to just give people tea and have a therapy session with them. This book is a good example of why I annotate and why I underline, because sometimes when I'm feeling a little down, I like to just go through my annotations of this book, because it's basically a perfect example of all the parts that spoke to me the most while I was reading it, and I like to just go over those parts again, and they make me feel better. Especially this quote that I keep saying in videos: you keep asking why your work is not enough, and I don't know how to answer that, because it is enough to just exist in the world and marvel at it. You are allowed to just live. It is all most animals do. See, that's like, it makes me feel nice. I love it when the robot says, because I know that no matter what, I'm wonderful. Amazing. I love the confidence, little robot man. Oh man, the sound that this book is making now that it has gotten wet, not good. And you know what? Once I finished this book and reviewed this book, I didn't yet know that this was going to be one of those books that I'm going to be continuously returning to, that this was going to be one of those books that I keep quoting in every single video that I make, apparently. But those are the things that you realize after you finish the book, right? The story keeps living on after you flip the final page, after you give it a rating on Goodreads, after you do a review to your friends. The book keeps living on, the story keeps living on, and it keeps impacting you in your life and kind of growing and living with you and changing in its own way. And then maybe later you start realizing, oh, this book really, I guess, had an influence on me that I didn't even realize once I finished it. And that, I guess, is kind of what I wanted to acknowledge in this video. Oh, I forgot to talk about this Angela Carter book. I told you about the Bloody Chambers one that I keep returning to, and I wanted to give like an honorable mention to Angela Carter's book of fairy tales, which is, my gosh, there's like hundreds of fairy tales in this. I don't know how that woman did it. She wrote so many, and I think this is a good example of one of those books that, am I ever going to be finishing every single fairy tale in this book? Let's be honest, no. Probably not, because they've just published every single thing that she wrote, and some of them are really good and others are like, you know, they're fine. But the point, I think, of owning a book like this is not that you're going to be finishing it like from start to finish. There's also pretty illustrations in here as well. Look, that's really cool. But the point is more to sometimes read one story and then enjoy that story, and then another time reading another story and then enjoying that story. Ooh, I have another piece of fiction that is actually on my Kindle. Having a Kindle also kind of has an influence on this, because I've noticed that there is one story that I keep rereading, partially because it is on my Kindle. So if I have my Kindle with me on a holiday, I always, you know, download books that I want to read on that holiday, but then sometimes I'm like, I don't really want to read the book that I have with me right now. And then I go through what is already on my Kindle to see if there's something that I want to reread. And there's this one story called The 6 Lives of the Saint. It is a short story by Alex E. Harrow that I found myself wanting to reread quite often. Sometimes I'm on a plane and I'm like, I don't really feel like reading a long story. I just want to reread this story. Or I don't really feel like reading any of the other things that are on my Kindle right now. I just want to reread this story and feel something, because my gosh, this story makes me feel something every time. And I'll explain to you why this is the perfect rereadable story. So the idea of The 6 Lives of the Saint is that we follow a saint of war that is like conquering kingdoms for her king. And every single time she dies in war, she is reborn kind of with the same knowledge of her past life. Which means that every single time she gets like a little further in her conquering, and then with the knowledge of that past life, she's reborn and gets a little further every single time. There's a very cyclical nature to this story, which makes it perfect for rereading. It is also one of those stories where, you know, there's like a lot of foreshadowing in it. So every time you reread it, you notice different things that you didn't notice the first time that you read it. And it also really punches you in the gut. This is a really emotionally raw story, so sometimes I'm like, I just want to feel something. And then I reread this. And again, I didn't know that that was going to happen when I finished it. I don't think I ever actually reviewed it in a wrap-up, but only now after rereading it a few times and finding myself longing for this story a few times, I realized that this story made more of an impact than I initially thought. Ooh, another example of a book that I'm technically never going to like finish, but I just like to keep returning to it. Oh, I love showing off this book. It is my Zelda book. Zelda Breath of the Wild, Creating a Champion. If you don't know, Zelda Breath of the Wild is a game that is my favorite game of all time. I love Zelda games. If you like Ghibli movies, you would probably enjoy Zelda games because the creators are very clearly inspired by Ghibli movies. And Breath of the Wild is just this like exploration game. It looks beautiful. It's so much fun. And I have the book with all of the art design, character design, the like location design. My gosh, concept art, look at that. Oh my gosh, as a gaming and art enthusiast, this is like my holy Bible. There's a whole map in there. So much lore. Oh, I love just like looking at it once in a while, you know? This is one of those books that I'm never gonna like review on the channel because like it's not a novel, but I really love it. So I guess I just wanted an excuse to talk about it and tell you that this is a book that I own that I really love and that I really treasure. Like, what are some concept art books that you guys own? Like books like these, kind of coffee table books that you really like. Because we never really talk about books like that on BookTube or BookTok or Bookstagram. But they're really cool and they make me really happy. I also really would love to have those concept art book for Ghibli movies. Oh, that is my dream, to just see the concept art and how like the art came to be and like the sketches. Oh, I would love to see that. That would make me so happy. Heavy book, heavy book. And then the last one that I think the most recently finished book, but that I think is going to start having the same status as the rest of the books I already mentioned, is All About Love by Bell Hooks. Again, I've already talked about this ad nauseum, but I'm never gonna get nauseated from this book. And this is another essay collection from Bell Hooks about love and her ideas of love, relational love, but also friendship love, family love, community love, how we've kind of bastardized the idea of love in like modern romance media. I knew this was going to be one of those constantly return to books after I've basically used quotes from this book for like multiple videos now. That's usually a sign that this is a book I love to return to. Again, it's another one of those books that's kind of soothing because it gives such a different perspective on love. It can be very soothing if you're the type of person that is always like looking for a kind of like perfect type of love or feels like that is what you need to do because that's what society always tells you to do. And this book kind of gives a different perspective on love. It's very inspiring or like activating because it really talks about the importance of love in like your politics and your political opinions. So yeah, another one of those books that I don't just want to read and then leave behind for the rest of my life. I want to keep returning to it. And I think there's something really exciting knowing that every book that I read could become one of these kinds of books. And I would love to know from you guys, what are these kinds of books for you? And I would encourage any content creator to make a video like this. Like if you have a booktube or a booktalk or a bookstagram, make a video kind of like this, because I think that these are all books that tend to kind of fly through in the online book community sphere, because you don't technically finish them, or you know, you reread them a lot and then you only talk about them once. What are these kind of forever books to you? What are the books that you keep rereading? What are these books that you maybe technically haven't finished yet but you keep returning to? Basically, what are some books where your opinion of them or your love for them isn't fully realized in just the typical review a book once you finish it format? Okay, that was everything. I'm going to put all these books back on my shelf. I'm going to finish this video. For the final time, I'm going to be thanking all of my patrons for supporting me, because after 2 years of doing the Patreon book club, I've decided to finish it because I have so many other things that I want to focus on right now. So one final time, a special shout out to my elite Patreon members. For everyone, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon in another video very soon. Goodbye.